let's be real. If you drive a manual Jeep, there are some things that you need to know and understand to make it more enjoyable out on the trails. I have tips that I'm going to be sharing with you today for the beginner just starting to hit the trails, as well as some advanced tips for seasoned drivers and ways to improve your trail experience in a manual towards the end of the video. So I have everybody covered. We're going to start with tip number 1, which is your Jeep drives differently on-road in two-wheel drive than it does off-road in 4-low. The reason why that is when you put your Jeep in 4-low, you are engaging your transfer case, which means you're now sending power to the front end of your Jeep, but you're also engaging the gears within your transfer case to get the deepest reduction that you can within your transfer case. I'm just going to touch on this briefly today, but don't worry, I have a full transfer case video driving your way where we go in depth on the transfer case. So to get an even deeper understanding of what that means and also understand how the drivability changes, we're going to do my favorite exercise. I actually use this exercise at all of our in-person events. For any of our amazing ladies that have manuals, we're going to jump right in. My favorite exercise, it is the stall exercise. Wait, did she just say that we're going to purposely stall our Jeep? Absolutely, because guess what? Jeep made this amazing thing, and it is called a starter, and we're going to use that today. All right, so start 1 of this exercise. You're going to go ahead and have your Jeep in two-wheel drive, and you're just going to drive it around. So practice getting started in first gear, practice stopping in first gear. Try to only use your clutch as much as you absolutely need to. All right, now comes the fun part. We're going to do our stalling exercise. So for this exercise, make sure to put your Jeep down in 4-low. Again, based on your transfer case, that's going to determine how your Jeep responds and reacts to this actual exercise. They're all a little bit different, but here comes the fun part. This is really about knowing your vehicle, getting the feel for your vehicle, and bringing your driving skills to the next level as well. And here we go. Now that we are in 4-low, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start out in first gear. You're not going to use your gas pedal foot at all. You're just going to set it on the floor, and you're just going to use your clutch to get your vehicle going. So we're going to put it in first gear. Then all we're going to do is slowly let out the clutch, and we're going to allow the vehicle to basically just drive forward without stalling. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to go through all of our gears. So now we're going to start out in second. So put your Jeep in second. Again, don't use your gas pedal. We're just going to use the clutch to let it get going and start rolling. Basically, we're going to continue doing this through all of the gears until you find your stall point. Remember, please keep in mind, I have an Atlas transfer case, so my transfer case is going to be a little bit different than yours, but the principle is going to be the same.
Second, no gas.
You will find your stall point. Again, depending on how your Jeep is geared and what transfer case you have, this is going to play a crucial part in this. But we're just trying to find out, where do you hit with your Jeep that you find your new stall point when you're in 4-low? All right, favorite part. Now we're going to be stalling with your brake. This is such kind of a fun exercise that we're going to be doing together. So we're going to start out in first gear, get your Jeep rolling, and then you're going to use your brake until you stall your Jeep. Yeah, we're going to stall it. But what I want you to pay attention to and notice while you're doing this exercise is how much brake can you use? How hard do you have to push to get your Jeep to stall in first gear? And then also notice, how slow are you able to get the tires rolling before it stalls? Once you have done that in first gear, then I want you to go back through, do the same thing in second gear so that you can really start to get to know your Jeep. How about some fun? All right, first gear. Remember, I do have a different modified Jeep. See, I'm rolling. And now I'm going to go ahead and push the brake. I have no stall point in first gear when I am flat and rolling. You have done that in first gear, then I want you to go back through, do the same thing in second gear so that you can really start to get to know your Jeep.
stalled it. So I found my stall point.
Yes, we are flat. Yes, there's nothing that is stopping the vehicle, like rocks or obstructions. But this is a great way to get started to get to know your stall points in your Jeep. So it's just a way of really kind of getting to know the feel of how your Jeep changes, where your particular stall point is. And this helps drastically when we're out on the trail. What we are trying to do is just cut down on the amount of situations where you don't need to be riding the clutch so much, playing with the clutch so much. Of course, there are times you're going to have to on the trail. But what this does is it gives a starting point to understand your Jeep has now changed. You're not going to drive it with the same clutch to gas and clutch to brake out on a trail off-road as you would around town. Now that we have finished the stall point exercise together, we're going to jump into tip number 2. If you have a manual Jeep, is to try ride as much as possible in 4 low. Reason being, you are going to change that stall point. You're going to be able to navigate the terrain. And again, it's just going to be a little bit easier for you with that full reduction when you are in 4 low trail riding. Now, there are times you're going to want to be in 4 high. If you're making ground, if you're on easy trails, there's not a lot of terrain, there's not a lot of hills, then absolutely 4 high is great. But as soon as you turn down a trail where there's going to be rocks, terrain, some challenges, uphills, downhills, I recommend if you have a manual, put it in 4 low and try to drive as much as possible on the trails in 4 low. It's going to make it easier for you as a driver, and it's going to make it easier for your vehicle itself to be able to navigate that terrain so that you can work together. Let's get into tip number 3. Make sure to tell people that you are driving a manual transmission. When you go on a group trail ride, when you're out with a group of people, you need to go ahead and let the people know you're riding with that you're in a manual transmission. What that means is they need to give you a little bit more space, and you need the ability, in case you need to be able to slow down, speed up. So the person behind you needs to know. And I will be honest, I let the people behind me know I'm in a manual because I downshift. So I'll downshift, upshift. So you're not going to see my brake lights. So I always let the people know behind me. If there is someone behind me, I'll be honest, if you are in a manual transmission, I feel like it is the easiest to be the tail. So to be the last vehicle on the trail ride, if that is possible. If that is not possible, again, just make sure to let the person know who's going to be behind you that you are in a manual transmission, as well as the person in front of you. Because if you are following trail etiquette principles and guidelines, you're responsible for the Jeep behind you. So what you don't want is the person in front of you stopping constantly because they're losing sight of you, because you may slow down for a particular obstacle, but then you're going to speed up to catch up. So just let them know that you're going to be playing the slinky game, which is you'll speed up, you'll slow down, you'll speed up, you'll slow down. Unless they make a turn, they don't need to worry about you. Let the person behind you know. They got to play the slinky game. Sometimes you're going to slow down, sometimes you're going to speed up. So that is just how that trail ride's going to go. Let everyone know ahead of time so no one is surprised, nobody gets frustrated, and everyone understands why you're driving the way that you're driving. Start reading your terrain. This is our next tip. When you start trail riding, you're starting to get to know your Jeep, try to start looking ahead at the trail that's coming ahead of you and reading your terrain. What does that mean? If you're going to come to a hill climb, for example, I'm not going to do it in first gear. I'm not going to be able to have enough wheel speed. I'm going to have to shift in the middle of the hill. So I'm going to start in second gear at the bottom of the hill. So as I'm going, I can just continuously use my throttle, my gas pedal to nice and smoothly make it all the way up to the end of the hill. I try to start in the gear that I think I'm going to need so that I can make it with enough wheel speed for the hill. Now, same thing going downhill. You know, the easiest thing is to set your manual in a gear and not have to be shifting, especially partway down a hill. Sometimes first gear might be too low and you'll need to shift to second. But always think about, start getting to know your Jeep, how it responds to trail. Start reading the trail and have an idea if you're going to start in first, if you're going to start in second. Start just kind of enjoying getting to know your Jeep and tuning those skills while you're out on the trail. Just let your Jeep drive you around. Play with first and second gear if you have a manual, and then just put both feet on the floor and see how long your Jeep will just drive you around. May take you a little while to get there, but I like to do this even on the trail and play the game of how far will my Jeep drive itself before I have to give it gas. Sometimes we're too quick to jump in and try to direct our Jeep, when really, if we'd just been a couple minutes more patient, the Jeep would have continued on its own. Or maybe it only needed a little tiny bit of gas to help it. This is a great game to play around with. See if it'll crawl stuff without you having to help it. Makes the trails more fun, and it lets you get to know about your vehicle and your Jeep even better. Tip number 6, and this is something that applies to all Jeeps, not just manuals. I want to talk about throttle control in your Jeep. There's nothing worse than you're on a trail and you're accidentally hitting the gas and the Jeep is lurching and you're being thrown around. I want to give you a tip when we start talking about throttle control for you and your Jeep out on the trail. What you're going to do is you're going to look down and notice where your transmission wall is. You're going to take the heel of your foot, stick it on the ground. I'm a little short, so I have a little bit harder time. On the ground against that wall, and you're just going to be using the ball of your foot or the toes of your foot for your gas pedal. You're actually going to be pushing against that transmission wall with the side of your foot. Reason being, if you're out on the trail, you're going over rocks and you're going over ruts, and all of a sudden, instead of your foot just sitting there bouncing straight up and down, hitting the gas, hitting the gas, hitting the gas, it allows you to stick your foot over and control your actual throttle. This is something I recommend. Manual, automatic, doesn't matter. If you're out trail riding, this is going to help you to have a smoother trail ride and have more control with that throttle positioning. Now let's talk about some more advanced tips for modifying your manual Jeep. If you're going to be trail riding and you want to make modifications that are going to increase the drivability, the ease of drivability, and just some things to be aware of to know so that you are educated and have the knowledge if you own a manual transmission. Our advanced tip number 1, of course, is gearing is crucial. Everyone knows this, right? If you're going to put bigger tires, lift, or change things out on your Jeep, making sure that you re-gear is crucially important, and the right gear set. But that is even more so in a manual transmission. If you are under geared for the size of the tire that you have on your Jeep, it is not going to be a fun trail ride. It's going to be harder to get your Jeep over obstacles, through tough terrain, and do so in a slow, controlled manner. If you are under geared, you're going to have to use more speed. You're going to feel like it's a lot harder. You're having to do things at a higher speed than you really want to be doing. So just remember, crucially important to make sure you have the correct gear set based on the tire size that you have. All right, I've touched on this briefly today, and I'm actually going to be doing a full in-depth dive video where we're going to go into detail about the transfer case. That is like so much to learn all of on its own as a full video. But changing out and upgrading your transfer case in a manual transmission can make such a difference. Whether you go to a 4-to-1 Rubicon case or you go to like an aftermarket Atlas where you're just getting that deeper transfer case. Reason being, this is going to change your low end, it's going to change your crawl, it is going to change your stall points, and it is just going to make it easier to go slower and navigate hard trails if you change out that transfer case, if you do not already have a Rubicon or an aftermarket transfer case. Now, this is something I feel like is not crucial until you start moving up to harder trails. So as you advance, the trails get harder, you need to help modify your vehicle and your Jeep to make it easier and more successful to do those trails. When I say easier, I'm not talking about, oh, it takes the challenge out, it's easy. I'm talking about having the ability to be safe, to be in control, to be able to navigate, to be able to drive the way you want your vehicle to be able to drive, to not have to rely on speed to get through an obstacle. You're going to have more low end, you're going to have more crawl. It is going to be more manageable for you as a driver, and you're going to have more adjustability. That's what I mean when I say easy. All right, here's a modifying tip for you. Depending on what Jeep you have, what generation, you can actually add a throttle control to your Jeep. What? Say what? Yes, there's lots of different options that you can use, but what that does is that allows you as the driver, gives you the ability to change your RPM so that if you have a big hill climb or ledges, lots of steep climbs with big rocks, you can actually bump up your RPMs, which means it's like giving it a little more gas, so that if you are hung on a hill and trying to get over rocks, when you let the clutch out, you're going to be at a higher RPM. That is going to mean you are less likely to stall, and it is going to give you more adjustability and maneuverability in a manual on the harder trails. Again, we're talking harder trails here. These are kind of what I would call your advanced upgrades that you can make on your manual. They're going to make a significant difference in its ability as you're moving up to harder and more difficult trails. So the biggest tip that I have for you is to get out there. Go out, enjoy your Jeep, practice, get to know your Jeep, put in some more seat time, and have a great time out there on the trail in your amazing Jeep. I'm Kristen DeLibra from LadyJeepers.com, and I hope to see you out on the trail. I think it's only 96 today, with it feels like it's like 108 here in the south. Woo! Just driving around, having a great time, enjoying being out. I am melting a little today, but not as bad as yesterday. And I'm not stalling. And I'm not stalling. And I'm not stalling. And I'm still not stalling. And I cannot stop my Jeep. Being attacked by a fly. Being attacked by bugs.